The drought of 1887 destroyed everything in Wyoming. Hope was as rare as rain. That year, the most valuable liquid wasn't gold or whiskey, but milk. A young girl set out alone on the dusty road to save someone's life, not knowing that this would change her own fate forever. On the Colorado borderlands, the morning sun was already high in the sky when 16-year-old Emma Harrison's fragile figure appeared on the dusty road. Her skirt was torn, her shoes worn from the long walk. Her hair was messy, her face sunburnt, but her blue eyes still held the fire of youth. She had been walking nonstop for 3 days. During her journey, she saw dried-up farmlands, abandoned farms, and heard the stories of desperate people. At one farm, she found the owner dead with an empty water bucket beside him. At another place, they pulled a gun on her. Everywhere she heard the same thing: there's no milk. Every drop of liquid is worth gold. Emma's bag contained only a piece of dry bread and an empty milk can. She bet everything on one card, the last hope. She had heard that at the foot of the mountains a lone farmer still had dairy cows. In the distance, she spotted the Greenwood farm. Around the house, some grass was growing green, which was miraculous in this drought. A small creek trickled beside the farm, perhaps the last living stream in the area. Inside, Joe Greenwood was sipping his morning coffee. In his 60 years, he had seen more than others see in a century. Wars against Indians, bandit attacks, fights for land. All had hardened his face, covered with a rough beard. On his left cheek ran a long scar, a memory of an old duel. His wife died 10 years ago. They never had children. After losing Susan, Joe withdrew into himself. Since then he lived alone, only in the company of cows and horses. His only human contact was the monthly trip to Durango to buy supplies. When there was a knock at his door, he first reached for his rifle. The Wild West taught that strangers often meant danger. Lately, he had to be especially careful. Due to the drought, looting had increased, and Joe's ranch was considered an oasis in the dried-up land. The girl standing in the doorway, however, posed no threat. Her face was sunken, her lips chapped from thirst. Her dress might have once been beautiful, but now dust and sweat covered every square inch of it. Emma spoke. Her voice trembled, but she stood with a straight back as her mother had taught her. Layla Harrison always told her daughter that posture reveals more about a person than their clothes or words. "Pardon me for disturbing you. I need milk. I can't pay, but I would work for it. I'll do anything." Joe was silent for a minute, then his gaze sized up the girl. He saw the desperation in her eyes. It was a look he knew well. He had seen the same in his wife's eyes when the doctor told her she wouldn't survive her illness. "What do you need milk for, girl?" "You can quench your thirst with water. I'm not well stocked with that either, but I'll give you a glass. It's not for me. It's for my little brother. He's very sick. The doctor said only milk can save him. His lungs are weak, and he can only take the medicine with milk." Joe saw the shame in Emma's eyes, the kind of shame only felt by those forced to beg. It was a familiar feeling to him. He too had begged once, when he lost his family in Ireland during the Great Famine. He arrived in America at 15 without a penny, only his labor to offer. "Come in. I'll give you a glass of water. Then we'll talk about the milk." Emma entered the modest house. Simple furniture, an old rifle on the wall, next to it a framed photograph of a smiling woman. A Bible on the table, beside it a worn silver pocket watch. On the windowsill, dried flowers, perhaps the last memories of his wife. Joe poured her water in a clean glass. Emma drank eagerly, but her eyes continued to plead. Meanwhile, her gaze wandered to the photograph. "My wife, Susan. She died 10 years ago. Tuberculosis took him, like many others in this region. The mines here destroy people's lungs. Emma lowered her eyes. The pain in Joe's voice was too familiar. Where is that sick brother of yours? In Durango. Our grandmother takes care of him. Our mother died in childbirth. Our father abandoned us when he learned he was having another child. We never saw him again. Joe's gaze hardened. This was a familiar story in the Wild West. Too many orphans. Too many broken families. He refilled Emma's glass, then sat down at the table. Durango is more than 40 miles from here. How did you come this far? I've been to every farm between Durango and here. Nobody would give milk. They said every drop is worth gold because of the drought. Some won't sell it even for money because they don't have enough for their own families. Joe thought. He hadn't talked to anyone this long in years. His heart had been hardened by loneliness and loss. But this girl somehow reminded him of his own youth, when he, too, was ready to do anything to survive. He went out to the yard. Emma followed. He walked to the barn where 4 cows stood. Despite the drought, he had saved them. He worked day and night to get water for them. He had his own well that nobody knew about in the area. He kept it secret, afraid they would take it from him. I had 6 cows 2 months ago. 2 died. These 4 barely give milk. I need every drop to survive the winter. Emma's eyes welled up with tears, but she didn't cry. She had to stay strong. Her mother always said, crying doesn't solve anything, only action does. I understand. Sorry for the trouble. I'll move on. Maybe there's someone beyond the mountains who has milk. Joe knew there was no one. He was the last one who still had milk-producing cows in the area. The girl probably wouldn't survive another days-long walk. As she started to leave, Joe reached after her. His calloused palm grabbed Emma's thin hand. The girl froze. Something changed in the farmer's eyes. Come, let's milk some into your can. But I can't give it for free. You'll have to work for it, as you promised. In the stable, Joe began teaching Emma how to milk. The girl learned skillfully, like someone who understood this could be the key to survival. Her hands quickly caught the rhythm, the milk trickling into the can. As they worked, Joe started telling stories. He hadn't spoken to anyone in years, but now the words came on their own. I spent my first winter here alone. It was 1858, before the war. I almost died. The storm blocked my door. I sat in the cold for 3 days. Then an Indian came. He was Cheyenne. I thought he would kill me, but he brought food. He taught me how to survive in this cruel world. He taught me how to milk wild buffalo, how to fish under ice. I never got to repay him. 2 years later, he was killed in a battle. Perhaps now is the time to give back something of what I received. They filled a medium can with milk. Emma thanked him, but Joe gestured that they weren't finished. He showed another can. We'll fill this one, too. It's a long way to Durango. If you only have 1 can, you'll never make it home with the milk. When they finished, Joe pulled out some herbs from the corner of the stable. Put these with the milk. It prevents it from souring quickly. Old Indian recipe. Such knowledge can mean the difference between life and death. Emma gratefully took the bag. But Joe wasn't finished. Stay here tonight. Tomorrow, I'll take you part way in my wagon. You'll never make it home on foot with that milk. It'll either sour or you'll collapse from exhaustion. You can sleep in the stable. You can lock the door from inside. No one will harm you. I give you my word, and Joe Greenwood never breaks his word. At night, Emma couldn't sleep. Through the stable window, she saw Joe up all night, chopping wood, preparing the wagon, drawing water from the well, packing provisions. At dawn, he knocked on the door. "We need to set out. It's a long way to Durango." On the wagon, Joe was quiet. Emma glanced at him furtively sometimes. This man, who was a stranger yesterday, could now save her brother's life. He had met kind people before, but had never received such selfless help. "How long have you had the cows?" Joe thought before answering. "Susan always loved fresh milk. When we found out she was sick, I thought milk would give her strength. I milked for her every morning. On the last day, she couldn't drink any more. But she smiled as always. The cows are still here." Emma remained silent. There were no words that could ease the man's pain. Instead, she started talking about work, her brother, and little stories from Durango. Joe listened attentively, sometimes even smiled. Around noon, bandits appeared on the horizon. There were 3 of them, on horseback. Joe stopped the wagon, laid his rifle in his lap. His face grew grim. "These are Tucker's men, an old adversary. They've been watching for a while. They know I still have cows." The bandits drew closer. Their leader, a short but muscular man, spat in the dust. A scar disfigured his face. One eye was opalescent from an old injury. "What's in the wagon, old man?" "Nothing that would be valuable to you, Cal Tucker." The bandit grinned. He knew Joe's name. Tucker once tried to steal Joe's cattle. 2 of his men died in the attempt. "And the girl? Is she valuable?" Joe didn't answer. He slowly raised his rifle. His hand didn't shake, though he hadn't shot at a person in years. "Leave, Tucker. I don't want to shed blood. But I will if I have to." Tucker laughed. His companions drew their weapons. Emma trembled but didn't show her fear. Her mother taught her that fear paralyzes, it must be hidden. "How much milk do you have at home, Joe?" "I heard you're the only farmer who still has cows." Joe's facial muscle twitched, so that's why they followed. Milk was more valuable than whiskey in these times. "I have no milk for sale." The bandits moved closer. Dismounting their horses, they surrounded the wagon. Emma suddenly stood up in the wagon. "The milk is mine. It's for my brother. If you want to take it, you'll have to kill me first." Tucker was surprised by the girl's courage. He hesitated for a moment, and that was enough for Joe. He seized the moment. He fired quickly, but not at the bandits. At the ground in front of their feet, into the dust. The loud bang scared the horses. They went wild, and the bandits struggled to stay in their saddles. "Get out of here, or next time I won't aim at the ground." Tucker rode away with his companions, hatred in his eyes. Joe knew this wasn't the end of their feud. By evening, they reached the small settlement called Crow Ridge. Here, Joe rented a room for Emma at the local inn. Emma went up to her room, while Joe sat in the inn's bar. He wasn't drinking, just watching people. In one corner, a stranger kept looking at him. Joe knew he was Tucker's man. Word had spread that there was fresh milk in town. Joe kept watch outside Emma's door all night to prevent any trouble. They continued at dawn, but around noon a dust storm hit. They sought shelter under Joe's wagon, covered with blankets. Emma trembled from cold and fear. "My mother said nature always gives and always takes. What matters is that we endure." Joe nodded. Those were wise words. Susan had once said similar things. When the storm subsided, they discovered one of the horses had gone lame. A thorn had pierced its hoof, which Joe carefully removed, but the horse couldn't walk properly. Joe knew they wouldn't reach Durango in time with just one horse. "I have an old friend not far from here, Tom Hawkins. Maybe he'll lend us a horse." Hawkins's farm was worn down. The drought had taken its toll here, too. Tom greeted them unfriendly. They were once good friends, but their relationship had soured over a disagreement. When Joe asked for a horse, he laughed. "My last horse died yesterday. There's no help here, Joe. I need the water and food, too." Then Tom's wife, Rebecca, appeared. In her hand was a small bottle of milk. They had been saving it for their own sick child. When she heard Emma's story, despite her husband's protests, she gave them the milk. "Put it in the can. Every drop counts. God will help us somehow, too." Joe was touched by his friend's wife's generosity. In return, he gave her his own set of knives that he had inherited from his grandfather. Tom was reluctant to accept it at first, but finally took it. They moved on slowly. Storm clouds were gathering in the distance. Joe watched the sky with concern. Another storm could be fatal for the milk. They camped in the forest at night. Joe made a fire while Emma checked the milk. Both cans were safe, but the heat wasn't good for them. "I don't think we'll make it in time. The milk is already starting to spoil." They spent the next day entirely on horseback. Joe walked beside the horse to lighten its load. By evening they reached the outskirts of Durango. The city lights gave Emma hope. Emma's home was a modest little cabin on the edge of town. Her grandmother stood in the doorway, wringing her hands. Her gray hair fell messily across her face, her eyes red from crying. When she saw Emma, she burst into tears. "He's still alive, my dear, but very weak." Inside, Marcus lay pale on the bed. He was barely breathing. His small body was almost lost among the blankets. Emma immediately brought the milk. Her grandmother helped feed the child. The little one swallowed a few times, then fell back onto the bed. Joe stood in the doorway, not wanting to intrude. Emma gestured for him to come closer. "We owe him for the milk. Without him, I would never have made it home." The grandmother gratefully squeezed Joe's hand. The farmer was embarrassed, unaccustomed to emotional displays. He had spent too many years alone. During the night, Joe helped care for the little boy. The milk and Indian herbs began to take effect. By morning, Marcus was breathing stronger, his face regaining its rosy color. 3 days passed. Marcus's condition improved. The milk, herbs, and Emma's care worked wonders. Joe visited them every day, bringing fresh food from the market. He also helped with work around the house. Emma's grandmother, Rose, thanked him with fine dinners. On the 4th day, Tucker and his gang appeared in town. They went around the inns, looking for Joe and the girl. Joe knew they were looking for him. In the evening, when Marcus was already asleep, he pulled Emma aside. "I have to go. Tucker won't rest until he finds me. I don't want to bring trouble to you." Emma's eyes filled with tears. In the past few days, Joe had become their family's support. He was more than a stranger who helped. He became a friend, almost family. "Stay with us. We're stronger together." Joe shook his head. He knew Tucker was a dangerous man, and he had to solve this problem. In town, he visited the sheriff, an old comrade. Together, they made a plan to capture Tucker. However, Emma followed Joe and overheard the conversation. That night, when Joe was about to leave, Emma and her grandmother blocked his path. The grandmother spoke. Her voice was strong, despite 60 years of hardship. All of life's wisdom reflected in her eyes. "My husband, Emma's grandfather, left like this once. He said he would protect us. We never saw him again. Don't make the same mistake. Joe hesitated. All his life, he had solved his problems alone. In the Wild West, this was the way to survive. But now, for the first time, he felt he belonged somewhere. The next morning, Tucker and his men attacked the sheriff's office. They didn't know a trap was waiting for them. Joe, the sheriff, and 3 locals surprised them from behind the roof. The shooting was brief but intense. One of Tucker's men died, another was wounded. Tucker himself faced Joe. The 2 men were old enemies. Joe once saved a woman's life whom Tucker had abused. Tucker never forgot the humiliation. "It's over, Tucker." "Put down your weapon." Tucker grinned. Unexpectedly, he raised his weapon at Emma, who stood across the street. He didn't know the girl had followed Joe, worried about him. Then she dies first. Joe shot without hesitation. The bullet hit Tucker's shoulder. The bandit dropped his weapon, shock on his face. He never thought Joe Greenwood would be faster than him. The sheriff arrested Tucker and his remaining man. Long years in prison awaited them. Joe breathed a sigh of relief. A nightmare had ended. 2 months had passed. In the yard of the Greenwood farm, Emma was milking cows while Marcus, now healthy, was feeding the chickens. His hair gleamed golden in the sunlight, his face flushed with health. The child still coughed occasionally but grew stronger day by day. Joe sat on the porch watching them while smoking his pipe. The drought had ended, the first rains had arrived. Joe decided not to return to his farm alone. Instead, he moved his animals to Durango, to the property of Emma and Marcus's grandmother. They weren't blood relatives, but fate and a can of milk had bound them together forever. In the Wild West, bonds weren't always born of blood. Sometimes a simple human gesture, an extended hand, meant more than anything else.